my stomach was
What's
grumbling.
a tummock?
It's what
Your tummock is
He was
tummock.
going to say tummy, but then he realized he was an adult company.
my tummy was growling.
Welcome back to the Rowdy Studios. I'm Buzz Cutler. That's Bassmasters on the end. Jenna, are you awake?
I was thrown off. I thought those were shoes, and now I see they're like half boots. And I just was recognizing
Half boots
that.
for a half man over there.
Oh, like how big are your boots
I'll
over there,
give you
Masters?
some of my boot,
Ooh,
and you could make
You're wearing
maybe
like go-go boots.
Are they?
Yeah, they're kind of like
They
go-go
need-
boots.
I wear a wedge because
But I think the effect is probably taken away by the sweater vests there.
Jim Tressel. Now, Jenna, we all
I
know
rock a sweater vest.
we all know and love you for your coverage of NASCAR, but you have been branching out into other motorsports of late. Been covering a lot of IndyCar, and you spent some time in Indianapolis earlier this week talking to some of the drivers. Obviously, after the tragedy that befell Dan Weldon, there's a lot of discussion about where does IndyCar go from here and what's the future of the sport, what sort of changes they need to implement. Let's just start with the tracks. And IndyCar running on what are these traditional NASCAR tracks, these 1.5 mile banked ovals, these SMI tracks like Las Vegas. Does IndyCar need to rethink keeping tracks of that nature on their schedule?
Well,
And are they rethinking it?
They're rethinking everything. The one thing I can say definitively is they are looking at everything. There's nothing that's not being looked at right now. The problem that IndyCar has is that they didn't have a full schedule announced even before the accident on October 16th. They had pieces of the schedule done, but there are still gaps. And most of those gaps were with ovals. They had New Hampshire and Kentucky this past year, and both of those have already said we're not going to be on the schedule next year. Because for some tracks, it's a bad business model. They don't, you pay a sanctioning fee, and they don't.
You got to get enough people in
You got to
the
get enough
gates.
people.
Is it just a coincidence that both of those are SMI tracks that you mentioned?
It was announced before Las Vegas, so if that's the core,
Okay.
even before Las Vegas, they had said.
But it may be a
But-
company
but-
decision that we're not going to go down this road unless we're making money here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that IndyCar probably made not a great business decision when they said they wanted to go to Las Vegas. They wanted the season finale to be Las Vegas. They wanted it so badly. Absolutely right decision, not questioning the need for them to do that. But they leased the track. And so
Oh,
when
I
you
see.
lease the track,
Then you're assuming the financial risk.
and they assumed the financial risk and they promoted it. Now, SMI is probably saying, okay, come and race it. You come and pay to race at all of our tracks. Why are we going to pay you $1.5 million, whatever the sanctioning fee might be? So that's tricky. But the other coincidence is, yes, most of the ISC tracks fell off the IndyCar schedule last year in favor of new tracks at SMI tracks. So they have now got a schedule that's got gaps in it, and they've got to fill it. And as you said, most of the venues in this country, most of the oval venues have been reconfigured, altered, changed to be more suitable for stock cars. We go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we as in NASCAR, and everybody complains it's a terrible
It's an narrow
race.
push
Right.
track.
Yeah,
It's too flat in the
it's too
corners.
flat, there's one
because it's an
groove,
IndyCar
because
track.
It's an IndyCar track.
Right.
So is it oversimplification to say that NASCAR style track, IndyCar style track are mutually exclusive? Is there a track that can serve both of those series well?
Phoenix could serve both those series
The
well.
new Phoenix.
Well, we assume the new Phoenix. I think Richmond could serve them
Right,
well because
right.
Richmond, even though
It's pretty flat, but it's got some banking
it's got some
on it.
banking,
It's pretty wide.
but-
It's
and
short-ish.
even though they're side by side in
Right.
the turns, they're not at the speeds they are
Right.
at a big super speedway. I don't think Kentucky was terrible, and I think that people do think that the Kentucky Cup race was bad. I think that they thought that was a boring race of follow the leader because there was really only one groove
Right.
to race in. And I think that Indy cars from all, and I want to clarify my IndyCar knowledge, my history of this sport is about 10 days old.
Right.
So I'm learning on the fly. The Indy cars prefer a racetrack with a dedicated line, with one groove, and they struggle more when you've got the two grooves. When you can race side by side in the corners. That's not a good mix for Indy cars. And
Right, because if
yeah.
you touch each other, you got a big problem. What would you change?
On the
They're
racetrack
obviously not going
or
to
the
change
car?
Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I mean, we know
Well,
that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, well, I don't think SMI is going to pay to make any alterations that would help.
Right.
That, you know, I mean, so yes, I don't think that the track's
So,
gonna
but what could you do to an Indy car?
Well, there's a few things that are already. Number one, they got this new car coming out, and
Yep.
there's going to be 3 engines next year, 3 manufacturers next
Yep.
year. There's only one right now. They're all exactly the same. When they're all exactly the same, you're all running the exact same thing.
Where have I heard
I
that
know exactly,
before?
exactly.
With 3, you're going to presume that one is excellent, one's okay, and one's trailing. And so your trailing teams are now going to be back here. Your middle teams are going to be here, and your good teams are going to be up there, and you're not going to have this gigantic pack. And then also what's very much lost and overlooked, and people don't like to talk about it, and Tony Stewart raised the point, is you have your race car, and then you have your driver. And your driver tells the race car what to do and where to go.
Yep.
And your driver decides, am I going to go wheel to wheel through this turn at 220 miles an hour, or am I going to let up a little bit? And, you know,
That's
and so,
fair, but by the same token, if you talk about, for example, Talladega, you create a set of conditions that make certain things
But
more
you know what?
likely, right?
Sure, you create a set of conditions that made it more likely. Those guys didn't have to race 2x2x2.
Danica did say she
She chose to
lifted
lift.
because she wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And those guys didn't have to race 2x2x2 at Talladega. These guys didn't have to race side by side through the turns, never lifting. Now, is it against a racer's
Yeah,
makeup?
it is.
To slow? Yes, but
I mean, that's sort of what they're paid to do,
Sort of
is
what
to
they're paid to
race,
do,
right?
yes,
So you're
yes.
saying, go out there, but don't really race that hard. And, you know, that's like, you can't,
But
I
your,
feel like you
your
can't
two
do that to
championship
those
contenders
guys.
in the Las Vegas race saw in the first 3, 4, 5 laps, well, this is crazy, and they scooted onto the back,
Yep.
which you get crucified for doing in NASCAR, but they didn't want any parts of that. So to one degree, the drivers have it in their hands as well, where they've got to make some decisions on what it is they want. But they got a new car coming, they got new engine manufacturers. IndyCar's got a lot of issues that they've got to wade through unrelated to the crash investigation. They had a lot of things that they had to look into before their season starts. They've got 6 months to do it. and I
How
hope they do it.
damaging ultimately is this to that sport? I mean, it just,
You know, they weathered the first week, and they got through the first week. They took a lot of body blows the first week, and they've gotten through it. They didn't fold. IndyCar still exists after the first 7 days. This is going to sound crass and callous, but when Dale Earnhardt died, what happened? A lot of people started watching. So I guess now maybe if people can find Versus on their television station, on their cable guide, maybe people are going to tune in and look, and maybe people are going to check it out. It's a great product. The races are tremendous. The drivers are wonderful personalities. The rivalries are great. Their championship race is always good. But people are looking at it now for the wrong reason. How they weather through it, the decisions they make going forward are going to be important. And these decisions existed before the accident.
Right.
These problems existed before the accident. So now we wait and see.
All right, that's Jenna Fryer, motorsports writer for the Associated Press, Bassmasters, Buzz Cutler, talking IndyCar. Thanks for watching.
Rowdy.com. Say it like it is.
Say what like it is?
Rowdy.com.